So you know who we are, we know a little bit about you, or slowly will. What is the handbook? So if this is your first time learning about the handbook, we developed the handbook together with an organization called BOP Inc. with support from el-Sheikh. It was published earlier this year in April 2022. And it's a guide or a toolkit for incubators and accelerators that have a climate focus and helps them integrate a gender perspective into their programs. So that's sort of the main target audience. It's also applicable more generally to accelerators and programs that have a climate focus. So for those of you who are maybe involved in programs that aren't necessarily in the accelerator format, but support entrepreneurs or support other type of learning or participation, this can also be really applicable to that. It has different exercises, it helps you with reflection, it helps you with assessments, and provides recommendations and interventions, so real tools that you can apply when you want to add a gender-specific approach, including real-life examples and additional resources. It's comprised of 3 parts, and the first section, which we'll be covering today, is about gender and climate focused goal setting. The first section also looks at making the case for gender climate lens acceleration. So this is the business case, the social case, and also helps you look at those entrepreneurs or participants that you're targeting and helps you identify more specifically who you want to attract and support in your programs. For a more detailed but also quick overview to understand what's inside, what the benefits are, you could look at a video that we put together on the handbook. We'll add the link in the chat and go a little bit more into the handbook in action. So to date, the handbook work plan, which is the second and third section of the handbook, it was used as an expression of interest in our gender mainstreaming for entrepreneurship call earlier this year in May. In total, we received 15 work plans from organizations across 7 different countries. After this, we asked some of these partners to give feedback around the time invested in the work plan. And in total, collectively, we saw that over 200 hours were invested so far. And now the program is taking shape. It's officially kicked off, and the handbook's been the basis for 3 different trainings, including this one today, and we have more to come. Case studies are also underway. So of those 15 work plans, 6 partners were selected from 4 different countries, and they're currently implementing their gender mainstreaming for entrepreneurship pilot projects, and these will go until May 2023. This is really exciting because we'll get to see the handbook from the planning stage into implementation, all the way to outcomes and results. We've gathered some firsthand feedback from some of these first users. Vivian from Indalo Inclusive South Africa, which is one of our Climate Launchpad partners, said, "We liked the format, the editable PDF. We liked the explanation of terms and the guiding examples. Made it easier to complete, found it innovative, and enjoyed the persona creation," which is great because we'll be doing persona creation today. So what is gender? Let's look at some definitions for this. What gender is and what gender isn't. So gender is the socially and culturally constructed ideas of what it is to be a man or a woman in a specific context. What it's not biological, and it's not synonymous with women. And how that relates to gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming, it's the process of integrating a gender lens into all aspects of an organization's strategies, initiatives, as well as its culture, systems, and operations. So quite an undertaking. It's certainly a process which starts with today and continues on and can continue to be improved and updated and iterated on. And so we'll be looking at how to look towards the future and looking long-term in terms of gender mainstreaming and applying a gender lens to your programs. We have a full glossary of terminology like this in the handbook, so if you're interested in getting more insight and learning about this, you can do that there. Let's look at why this is important. So why should you, why should accelerators care about climate and gender? So we already saw how disproportionate the impacts of climate change are. We see how the entrepreneurship field is and the landscape around venture capital. What we also know is that diversity in startup teams is proven to increase financial performance. So there we've got a clear business case around why we should care about this. We also know that women are more likely to innovate for social needs. And as women make up more than 50% of the population, that is a huge group of people of untapped creativity, untapped potential, untapped talent and passion that we could be engaging and activating. What we expect to see if you apply a gender lens to your program is we see changes across your organization, across the participants you work with, across the success of your program. By applying a gender lens to your program, you could be supporting the diversity of your own team in your own accelerator and organization. We see the opportunity to attract many new entrepreneurs, different entrepreneurs, and with that, the chance to uncover new types of innovations that startups are developing. And of course, having a big part and role in inequality and injustice and building a program that's founded on gender equality from the inside out and from the beginning on. So with that, that brings us into our first exercise, where I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of thinking, to look at your own organization, your own program, and what you'd like to change, what you'd like to do, what you'd like to achieve. So I'd like you to define your gender climate statements, looking at the long-term and the short-term and the steps to get to your long-term goals. So I'd like you to do create a vision statement, a long-term gender climate statement, which is inspiring for yourself, for your team, and see this as an objective that has a time frame of several years, think 10 years and beyond. I'd also like you to create a mission statement, which is going to be like the steps that you want to take to achieve your vision. So see it like a roadmap. Make sure it's actionable, make sure it's realistic, and it will essentially be the way that you set your goals so that you can achieve your vision. As I mentioned before, you can use the handbook PDF for this, or use a Word document, or just type it in the chat and save it for yourself afterwards. Please go to the next slide here. So we've put an example. This is taken directly from the handbook. EIT Climate-KIC's vision is a prosperous, inclusive, climate-resilient society founded on a circular zero-carbon economy by 2050. That's our vision statement. And the mission statement for this is EIT Climate-KIC's mission is to achieve systems transformation through innovation, inclusion, and diversity. We strive to achieve gender mainstreaming within all of our programs. So please focus on the two statements. Take a few minutes. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock and leave you with the next slide as inspiration. Go ahead and go to the, yes. And then afterwards, we will just share in the chat what we came up with. So this is a follow-up step, actually, directly from the handbook on how you would then follow up on your gender climate statements. In this exercise, we want to define our objectives. So what we would like to achieve, what we'd like to change in our programs. And we start out by looking at the current situation and reflecting, and then setting objectives from there. There's a lot of different areas and criteria we can look at. The handbook looks specifically at 5 different criteria to start out. we're going to look at the very first one, which is called startup leadership. And that is essentially the gender balance in your program. So you're going to look at your current situation. You can look at any data that matches the example indicators that I'm sharing here and we'll be sharing on the next slide. So an example would be, we currently work with 55% male-led teams, 35% mixed founder teams, and 10% women-led teams. So this is where you are. The next step is to look at where you want to go. And you'll want to look back on your vision and mission statements as you're putting this together to see if there needs to be any type of major shift in order to achieve your mission and your vision. And this can inspire the kind of target that you want to make and how ambitious you want to be. We encourage you to be as ambitious as possible, to aim high and look at this as something that will take time. So what kind of changes are needed to achieve your vision and mission? In this example, we want to include more women-led founder teams. So we want to aim to have 20% in total. So we want to go from 10 to 20. So this is a really straightforward criteria or objective that we want to change. So I'd like to ask you to do this for your programs. If you have data available, or you just sort of thinking anecdotally or thinking more generally, that's also okay. If you just sort of have an idea of where you're at, and then you can look at more specific percentages later. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so here is a snapshot at this section from the handbook at looking at startup leadership or looking at other criteria. So we also look at customer focus. So that's looking at the type of consumers who are targeted by your startups. So you may be interested in looking at who the beneficiaries are of the innovations that the startups you support, who they are, and if they are intended to be for women or men or children or a certain type of group. So that's one thing you can reflect on. You could look at area and sector of focus. So this, for example, would be you're mainly supporting startups that are in the energy space, but you'd really like to have a variety of different climate innovations or innovation types. You tend to see a lot of technology focused innovations, but you'd really like to see more innovations that are around community or more social focused innovations. And all criteria can be applied here. So if you are looking at geography, looking to tap into entrepreneur groups that are more in rural areas or of different ages, this is where you would set those objectives, where you would look at your current situation and then set goals for what you'd like to change, what you'd like to achieve. So let's use another 4 to 5 minutes to look back at our vision mission statement and at least set an objective for one of the criteria, whichever one you'd like. And then we can see if we can share a couple of these in the chat. Now we're going to move on to our final exercise. This one takes a little bit more work, tapping more into our creative sides. I'm going to ask everyone to create a persona for your program. And if you're not familiar with the persona, it's a semi-fictional character, and it's based on your current or your ideal target group. And it's useful to create a persona and do an exercise like this for the type of entrepreneur or program participant that you'd like to attract to your program in the first place. And what's great about this exercise is we look at things like barriers in applying to your program, which may often be overlooked. So it could be that you created a persona in a different way or a different format for your program, or you did this a long time ago and haven't refreshed it, or you just simply haven't done it when it comes to looking at your climate and gender goals, which is what we're going to do now. But this is really helpful in getting deeply inside of the the persona or the type of profile of the participant you'd like to support in your program, and getting behind the scenes of what kind of challenges or barriers that they go through, you know, how they live their lives and how they might come across your program and want to apply to it. We've come up with an example to help you create yours. It's on the next slide. So the thinking behind this persona was, here it is a semi-fictional character we came up with who would potentially, or we hope, would want to join our Climate Accelerator program at Climate-KIC, which is focused on circular cities and is open to startups across Europe. And the persona that we came up with is Gul Öztürk. She's a woman, she's 27 years old, and she's based in Berlin. And we even got down to the nitty-gritty details of, it's not just a circular company, but it's circular retail. The business model is both B2B and B2C. She's already has 6 employees, still an early age startup, but on the mature side. She has first customers, and she's currently fundraising for her seed round. Some of her aspirations include more widely being able to reduce waste and convince consumers to share, reuse, and buy less. So what we see is that she's more on the sort of community side, social side, less in the tech space. And the reason why she would want to join our program is because she'd want to be exposed to like-minded peers. She wants to work with the climate impact forecast to measure her CO2 emission saving, and we have a network of women founders, so she'd like to join and tap into that. Some of the challenges of even learning about our program or being interested in joining it is she's not so involved in the tech community, and that's primarily where our outreach is. She's really focused on capital right now, so she's very busy. And she doesn't see other Turkish founders in the program, at least not in our advertising or our comms materials. And that also makes it less interesting. The best time it would be to reach out for her potentially is Sunday evenings and weekday mornings. That's a guess based on her busy schedule. And possible ways to engage with Gul would be ad space, public transport ad space, and Instagram, because the channels that we currently use going through tech newsletters and through universities won't reach her. So these are the kinds of things that you might want to think about, and you get really, really specific and come up with some really specific details about the persona. But the more specific you get, the better you're able to look at the persona every time you're doing a step of gender mainstreaming. So when you're looking at your comms and outreach strategy, when you're looking at the different offerings in your program and how to make it attractive, how to frame different wording, how to communicate your offering. These kinds of things always come back to the persona. And you can create multiple personas. The only thing with that is you'll have to do the work with the handbook again and again with each persona, which is fine. But this is an exercise that you can repeat if you want. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so here are the different questions. And we've come with a little bit more time for this, but I'm going to keep it, I think, actually more to 5-6 minutes. And if you don't finish, that's fine, but it's great to just sort of get a start. And in the meantime, we can answer some questions while you work on this. So please look at these different questions about your persona and build the ideal entrepreneur that you'd like to reach with your program.
May I come in with a question again?
Absolutely.
Can we say that with this persona we are trying to create, let's say, an average candidate that we would like to reach with all the aspects, or from all the possible candidates that I could reach, am I trying to create one that is closest? Am I trying to create a persona that is closest to that candidate?
That's a really good question. I think what helps differentiate the sort of yeah, specific person that you're creating here is, again, going back to the objective, going back to the mission and vision. So it doesn't mean that you don't want to work with different personas, but it's really that persona that perhaps is the most, where there's the biggest gap, which you'd like to change. So if you would like to continue attracting certain personas that you already have, you know you've been able to successfully do that. So there you can apply things as status quo, business as usual, and do what you've already been doing. But if you're trying to increase a certain number of entrepreneurs that are women, or you're trying to look at a certain space and innovation and in climate, then you need to build the persona around that specifically. And that will help you decide, okay, out of all the many different kinds of entrepreneurs I could look at here, which single one am I going to use or attract building this persona? And that's how I would look at it. Look at that objective again.
Okay.
It seems quite straightforward, especially when you're looking at sort of the basic aspects of the persona, but I have found it challenging every time I've done the exercise, because you want to think about inclusivity. So if you add something here, does that mean it might discount one persona or another? And I think the focus, though, is to move away from that and not have it be general and have it be as specific as possible.
Any questions from Sophia, Sira Passon, Calvin, who are seeing this for the first time? Some of our colleagues are a little bit more familiar, but not all of them.
Something fun to do after you come up with the description and details that we've done in other exercises is drawing our persona. I'm not a great artist, but I also found it interesting to see where my mind went initially with my drawing. Yeah, so that's something you could do together with your team, with your colleagues, and see the different personas that you all come up with and find what things overlap, what things are different. And it's always fun to get people scribbling on paper. I know this exercise really does require a bit more time, but let's do one more minute and then see if we can have someone share either some or all of the persona that they've put together. And music's a really good idea, Krista, for next time in future workshops.
I'll note that down.
Me too. All right, shall we go to the sharing slide? Okay, your turn. So again, I know we went through this rather quickly, and encourage everybody to take the time after to build out their persona in more detail. But if you've already got a few things noted down, how about Kelvin? I don't think we've called on you yet. Would you be open to sharing your persona that you came up with?
So I'm still, hi Amy, I'm still finalizing on it. But let me just share on the chat, and then I can just take you through what I'm imagining the target would be when it comes to one of the personas that we need to think about incorporating, because in our programs they usually get overlooked, and because it's mainly because of lack of awareness of what opportunities are available to them. So I'd given her a name, Maria Sudi, probably about 35 years in a rural community, probably in Kenya. So Maria definitely has a small scale shop. So she has an SME. And what she really wants is to be able to grow this SME so that it can be able to sustain her and even probably help her address local issues where she's operating by creating probably jobs and also enabling other people to have to earn their livelihoods. Why she would need to apply to an accelerator. Number one is to be able to look deeply within our current business model and see what potential opportunities are already existing for her. Also see how to incorporate things like climate change. When it comes to barriers, we're looking at access to information. There is someone who probably has a functional phone, not a smartphone, so they might not be able to have access to information about the accelerators and all these other opportunities that exist. Best time to reach them, probably in the morning before they become very busy in their business, and possible channels to meeting them is weekends, during the town hall meetings and church activities.
That's great. We've got a really specific persona. Thank you so much for sharing with all of us. And yeah, these like the timing to reach out, the barriers, this is all really, really supportive in some of the next steps around building out your outreach and communication strategy. And we've seen some really creative action plans come out of the next steps after the persona from the program that I introduced earlier, including barriers like limited access to internet and access to information. So yeah, these are the kinds of things that that you have to tackle, right? In these unique personas that you want to reach more of. So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And let's go on to the next slide because we are low on time. Thanks again, Calvin. reflections. So we've just got about 1 minute left. So I'd ask you to reflect on everything we've gone through today. I know it was more rush than we would have hoped for, but I do hope there was time to learn about either yourself or your organization, or that something came out from today that can be helpful, useful, which you'd like to share with your team or share with others. And yeah, I'd be curious to learn if there was anything that surprised you or anything you're particularly keen to share with others. Feel free to share in the chat, since we don't have a lot of time to do a round or for me to call on anyone. But any general reflections you have about gender and climate or gender and entrepreneurship, do share in the chat, or you can use the time later when we send you a survey, which we talk about in the next slide. Next steps. Oh, it's the slide after. So we'll be sending a survey later to learn about what was helpful, what could have been improved, and also just general interest for continuing this work. So as I mentioned, I know this went through quite quickly. This is something that you could take more time doing. This is something that Climate-KIC can help with. So either going through the first steps in a deeper way, or with your team, or looking at the work plan development or implementation. These are all areas that we can support with. And if you're interested in this, you can either reach out directly and send our gender team an email to gender@climate-kic.org, or express this interest for follow-up workshops in the survey that we'll be sending afterwards. And then if you just go back to the slide before, I want to thank everybody for participating today, taking the time with me. Like I said, I know it was a lot of information and a lot of me talking at you. So this is more fun when you're sitting together with colleagues, with your teammates, and discussing the plan that you want for creating change. So congratulations on going through the goal setting section of the handbook. Next steps include getting your team involved and looking at sections 2 and 3, which are the self-assessment in 4 steps, which are these 4 areas. Looking at your own organization and team, looking at your outreach and communication strategy, looking at your program offering, how you support climate entrepreneurs in a gender smart way, and then of course, how you select and support startups further in an inclusive way. Those are the 4 areas. And then we also support with impact measurement and work plans. So doing some measurement and tracking your progress over time. There'll be some changes which you can implement quickly and some which will take time naturally. If you haven't already had the chance, you can download the We Climb Equally handbook for free from our website and continue this work on your own or together with us. And with that, we'll go to the closing slide.
Oops, going backwards.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for everybody who joined us today, and we look forward to continuing this work with you and helping you implement a gender perspective into your climate programs. Don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you. Wishing everyone a fantastic day and lots of fun in all of the future Week of Action events to come.
Yes, thanks, Amy. I'll close this session
Thanks,
with that.
Amy.